The sun hadn't yet risen over the sleepy town of Crescent Falls when the Mercer family home stirred with quiet excitement. It was a Saturday, fishing day. James Mercer, a local high school science teacher and single father, was already in the kitchen, packing sandwiches and carefully double-checking their tackle box. His 11-year-old son, Tyler, bounced down the stairs in his oversized hoodie, his eyes still heavy with sleep but shining with anticipation. "Got the worms?" Tyler asked, grinning. "In the cooler," James replied, ruffling his son's hair. "And yes, I packed the peanut butter ones too." They always joked about catching fish with peanut butter worms. It was their thing, little traditions that had grown between them in the years since Tyler's mother passed away. Their bond was unshakable, deep as the lake they loved to visit. Stillwater Lake had been their haven for as long as Tyler could remember. Remote, quiet, surrounded by thick evergreens, it was a place where James felt he could breathe, and where Tyler dreamed. Locals spoke fondly of the lake. Some whispered stories too, of strange occurrences and eerie sounds in the distance, but those were just tales, passed around campfires to spook kids. James had grown up here. He knew the land, the lake, the rhythms of the forest, and Tyler was fearless. That morning, they waved goodbye to Megan, James's younger sister, who had come by early to drop off a pie. She watched them drive off with a bittersweet smile, never imagining it would be the last time she'd see them. The sky was painted in soft hues of violet and orange when they launched the boat. A gentle mist hovered above the water, giving the lake a dreamlike quality. James steered while Tyler settled near the bow, legs swinging off the edge, casting his line with ease. They fished in silence for a while, listening to the water lap against the hull. "Dad," Tyler said, breaking the quiet, "do you think there's anything down there we've never seen?" James glanced at his son, curious. "Like what?" "I don't know. Big fish, old stuff. Maybe even a monster." He smiled, only half joking. James chuckled. "If there is, we'll be the ones to find it." They fished all morning, laughing, catching nothing, then something, then nothing again. Around noon, they dropped anchor near a quiet cove they called Star Point, named by Tyler because the trees above formed a perfect opening in the shape of a star. It was his favorite spot. The sun filtered through the trees, glinting off the water. Everything felt perfect. But that night, when they didn't come home, the first flicker of worry sparked. Megan called. No answer. Maybe they were just enjoying themselves, she reasoned. James often turned his phone off while out there. He liked to disconnect. But by 10 p.m., concern had become fear. The boat ramp was empty. No tire tracks led away from the lake. By sunrise the next day, search and rescue teams were combing the area. Helicopters scanned from above. Divers plunged into the icy waters. Nothing. Not a single trace. Local news picked up the story within hours. "Father and son vanish on Stillwater Lake," the headlines read. Friends and family gathered near the lake's edge, holding candles, clinging to each other, waiting for updates that never came. Tyler's classmates left drawings at the shoreline. One note, written in shaky child's handwriting, simply said, "Come back soon, Ty." But they didn't come back. And then the rumors started. Quiet at first, like wind rustling through pine. People whispered about the lake again. Old stories resurfaced, about the man who disappeared in '79, the campers who claimed to hear voices at night, the trail that some said you should never follow past dusk. Stillwater Lake, once the pride of Crescent Falls, became something else, a wound that wouldn't heal. Megan refused to give up. She pushed the sheriff's office for more resources, more attention. She spoke on local radio, on television. James wouldn't just disappear, she insisted. And Tyler's out there, I know it. But the seasons changed. Snow fell. Spring came. Life reluctantly moved on. 6 years passed. The lake remained quiet, until one stormy evening when something washed ashore and changed everything. But before we continue, make sure you subscribe. Stories like this one, real, mysterious, unforgettable, are what we bring to life every week. You won't want to miss what comes next. By the third day of silence, Crescent Falls was no longer just worried. It was shaken. What started as a missed phone call had become a community-wide emergency. Posters with James and Tyler's faces covered store windows and telephone poles. The sheriff's office, once relaxed and friendly, now buzzed with urgency. Calls poured in, volunteers lined up. The entire town rallied. The official search operation began with high hopes. Sheriff Connors authorized aerial sweeps of the surrounding forest and lake. Search dogs scoured the nearby trails. Boats combed the waters. Divers went down again and again. Stillwater Lake, once serene, now seemed vast and impenetrable. The deeper they went, the darker it grew. Megan, wrapped in a raincoat, stood on the edge of the lake every day. She barely slept, barely spoke. A few of James's former students brought her hot coffee and blankets. Others joined the search themselves. She wouldn't give up. Not on James, not on Tyler. James's truck had been found near the lake, keys still in the ignition. Inside, 2 empty soda bottles, a crumpled sandwich wrapper, and Tyler's drawing of a rocket ship. But the boat? Gone. No debris, no signs of an accident. A week passed, then 2. Still nothing. News stations descended on Crescent Falls, interviewing locals, speculating endlessly. Was it an accident? One reporter asked, or something more? Everyone had a theory. Some thought their boat capsized and their bodies had simply sunk too deep to be found. Others whispered about wildlife or foul play. Some even questioned James's mental state. Megan fought back. He was stable, loving, the most responsible man I know. He'd never hurt Tyler, never. Theories multiplied. Maybe they tried to hike out and got lost. Maybe they were attacked. Maybe they left on purpose. But none of it made sense. James had no enemies, no secrets. His life was quiet, predictable. His love for Tyler was unquestionable. The lake was searched again, sonar, drones, magnetometers. The search extended to nearby woods, canyons, old logging roads. Every lead turned to dust. Tracks led nowhere. Prints disappeared. Weather conditions erased clues almost as fast as they appeared. Crescent Falls was surrounded by wilderness, beautiful but merciless. Jason, Tyler's best friend, came to the lake every evening. He brought comic books, left them on the rocks. "In case he comes back," he told his mother. Megan saw him once, sitting alone, whispering to the water. She had to turn away. The volunteers began thinning out. Donations dried up. The sheriff's department reallocated resources, but Megan kept pushing. She hired private investigators, consulted psychics, anything that might bring a shred of hope. One psychic told her, "They're not dead, but they're not here either." Megan didn't know what that meant. She didn't want to. Every month she sent a letter to the governor's office requesting a deeper investigation. Every letter returned the same response. "We are doing all we can." But it wasn't enough. She knew it. The town moved on, but she wouldn't. The lake became quieter. Tourists stopped coming. Fishermen avoided the cove. The local ranger said birds no longer nested near the water's edge. The air felt heavier. Locals said the lake had changed. It was colder now, even in summer. The wind carried whispers, but no one spoke that out loud. Megan began visiting the library more often. She scoured maps, read old newspapers. There had been disappearances before, small ones easy to dismiss. A hiker in 1986, a canoeist in 2003, a woman and her dog in 1955, all near Stillwater Lake, all unsolved. When she asked the sheriff about these cases, he shrugged. Different times, not necessarily connected. But his eyes darted away. He wasn't convinced either. The Mercer case lingered like a ghost over Crescent Falls. School started again. Holidays came and went. But for Megan, time fractured. She still set 2 plates on Thanksgiving. Still hung a stocking for Tyler. Grief settled in like dust. Quiet, constant, impossible to sweep away. 6 months after the disappearance, Megan stood by the lake and screamed for the first time, just screamed. People heard. No one came. She dropped to her knees, whispering her brother's name over and over. The forest stood silent, The town began to change. People locked doors more often. Children were warned to stay close. Real estate near the lake depreciated. The once thriving Crescent Falls tourism dried up. The legend of Stillwater Lake was reborn, no longer a place of beauty, but of shadows. And somewhere beneath its surface, the secrets remained buried. But something would break through eventually, just not yet. 6 weeks after James and Tyler disappeared, the case transformed from a rescue mission into something else entirely. Hope was replaced by suspicion. Concern gave way to speculation. The Mercer family, once the heart of Crescent Falls, found themselves the subject of relentless whispers. At the diner, customers leaned in close, speaking in hushed tones. "What if he meant to vanish?" someone muttered. "Maybe he took the boy and ran." Others shook their heads. "James? No way. He wasn't like that." But seeds of doubt had been planted, and in a small town, they grow fast. Local papers clung to the story, printing every possible angle. Headlines turned bolder. Was this a planned disappearance? Dark secrets of Stillwater. Are the Mercers really gone? The articles offered more questions than answers, but they stirred the pot. People wanted explanations, even if none made sense. Megan faced it all. At first, she responded with calm determination. James loved his son more than anything. He didn't run, he didn't hide. But as time passed and the questions grew darker, her answers sharpened. If you don't know who he was, don't talk about him. Theories spiraled. One suggested James had gambling debts, though no evidence supported it. Another said he had a secret lover and had staged the disappearance. A few even believed Tyler had accidentally died, and James, overwhelmed by guilt, vanished into the wilderness. But James had no debts, no record of unusual behavior. His bank account showed nothing out of the ordinary. His last messages were normal. Nothing made sense. Then came the stories, the old ones. Elders in Crescent Falls began remembering things they'd tried to forget. "Stillwater's always been strange," said Elmer Rhodes, a retired ranger. "Things vanish out there, animals, people. You just don't talk about it." In the library archives, Megan found a clipping from 1979, "Local man missing after night fishing trip." The man, Caleb Jorgensen, had left behind an empty canoe. No remains, no explanation. His wife had claimed he'd been acting strangely before the trip, hearing things, waking up at night, sketching symbols. No one had believed her. Another file from 1955 told of a woman named Dora Melvin and her dog vanished during a hike near the lake. The dog was found 3 weeks later, alive but changed. It refused to go near the water again, even years later. These stories had long been dismissed as isolated incidents, until now. Locals began visiting the lake less often. Some claimed they heard voices near the shore after sundown. Others saw lights moving beneath the water, faint, bluish, pulsing. No one wanted to talk about it on record, but they talked. The sheriff, meanwhile, kept to the official narrative. No evidence of foul play. Search is ongoing, but even he seemed distant, haunted. He didn't return Megan's calls as often anymore. When she pressed him about the older cases, he waved her off. Coincidences, nothing more. At church, one woman pulled Megan aside. "My grandfather always said there's something under that lake. Something old, he wouldn't fish there. Wouldn't even walk past it." Megan began to feel it too, the weight. A sense of being watched when near the water. Her dreams filled with images she didn't understand. Dark waves swallowing light, voices calling from the deep, Tyler's laughter echoing from somewhere just out of reach. One night, she returned to the lake alone. It was quiet, windless. The moon reflected perfectly on the surface. She sat for hours listening, and then she heard it. A splash. Not close, not far. Then silence. Her breath caught. She waited, heart racing. But nothing followed. She told herself it was just an animal, or the wind. But she didn't go back for a while after that. In town, her isolation grew. James's older brother, Eric, flew in from Texas to help, though help wasn't exactly the right word. He'd always disapproved of James's choices, especially raising Tyler alone in a ghost town. He blamed James, not directly, but in tone, in glances. "He never should have taken the boy out there," Eric said to Megan one night. "He knew better. That lake's not right," Megan snapped. "He was a good father. He did nothing wrong. Stop trying to bury him before we know the truth." Eric left 2 days later, saying there was nothing left to do. The house remained untouched. Tyler's room, preserved just as he left it. His telescope pointed toward the window, aimed at the stars. James's notebook still open on the desk, filled with sketches of plants, clouds, and one small doodle of a boat floating under a crescent moon. Time moved forward, but Megan didn't. Neither did the town. Stillwater Lake stayed the same, silent, still, waiting. And one day, it would answer. It was a storm that brought it back. 6 years had passed. Stillwater Lake remained undisturbed, its waters unmoved by time or truth. But on the night of the strongest storm in a decade, something shifted. Rain fell in sheets, thunder rolled through the valley, and wind howled like it wanted to tear through the earth itself. Trees snapped, power lines failed, and along a remote stretch of shoreline, 40 miles from where James and Tyler had last been seen, something washed ashore. It was a boat. An old fisherman, Roy Tiller, spotted it first at dawn. He was walking the beach behind his cabin, inspecting the storm's damage, when he saw it, battered, wedged between driftwood and rocks. Its paint was mostly stripped away. The motor was corroded. But the registration number, faded but legible, was unmistakable. It was James Mercer's boat. Authorities were called immediately. The sheriff, now with grey in his beard and a weariness behind his eyes, confirmed the match. A forensic team was dispatched. The beach was cordoned off. News spread fast. Megan's phone rang before sunrise. She barely heard the words before she was in her car, driving faster than she had in years. When she saw the boat, something inside her broke open. It was real, tangible. After all the years of nothing, here it was. And inside, there were things. A child's life vest, pale blue with a faded cartoon shark, was found lodged beneath one of the seats. It matched the one Tyler wore the day they vanished. In the rear compartment, a sealed tackle box, rusted but intact. Inside, lures, hooks, and a plastic bag containing a bundle of papers, waterlogged but preserved enough to be legible. There was also a small wooden object, hand-carved, wrapped tightly in old cloth. At first glance, it seemed like a simple totem or charm. But the patterns etched into it were intricate, swirling, unfamiliar, unlike anything the team had seen. The contents were transported to the county evidence facility. The tackle box was opened under controlled conditions. The papers inside turned out to be pages from a journal, handwriting confirmed. They belonged to James Mercer. Megan was allowed to see them only after days of pleading. She sat in a quiet room, the box before her, gloves on her hands, heart pounding. She lifted each page gently, reading the words he had written. Some entries were mundane, notes about fishing spots, supplies, water temperature. But others were not. One page simply read, "Something's wrong with the lake." The FBI got involved 3 days later. An agent from the Seattle field office arrived quietly. No press, no announcements. Their presence was meant to be discreet, but everyone noticed. Suddenly, the Mercer case was active again. Megan wasn't sure whether to feel hope or dread. The journal was analyzed, scanned, preserved. Experts were brought in, linguists, handwriting analysts, psychologists. The FBI took the carved object for further examination. They wouldn't say what they thought it was. Back in Crescent Falls, people were talking again. Some were relieved there was finally a lead. Others were afraid. The return of the boat wasn't just strange, it was unnatural. 6 years at the bottom of the lake, only to resurface perfectly timed with a storm. The odds didn't make sense, and the boat showed no signs of long-term submersion. It was weathered, yes, but not waterlogged, not sunken. It was as if it had been stored somewhere, preserved, then released. Megan revisited the lake soon after. She stood at the same shoreline she had screamed from years ago. This time, the wind was calm, the water still. She whispered Tyler's name. There was no answer, but something had changed. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt full, like the lake was holding its breath. The journals stayed with the authorities, but Megan was allowed copies. She read through them obsessively. Her brother's voice, familiar but fraying, came through in ink and page. It began steady. It ended differently. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She stared at the same sentences again and again. The water isn't right. I saw lights last night. Something followed us. The final entry was the hardest. It read, "Tyler is gone. I keep hearing him, but I can't find him. I think we're being watched. If someone finds this, we were not alone." Megan closed the folder slowly. Everything she thought she knew collapsed. This wasn't just a disappearance, it wasn't just grief. Something had happened on that lake, and whatever it was still out there. The journal began innocently enough. Still water, 7:15 a.m., fog thicker than usual. Tyler wants to try the north end today. James's handwriting was neat, precise, a teacher's pen. He logged their trips meticulously, dates, weather, bait used, fish caught. The first dozen entries read like a nature diary, peaceful, ordinary, full of a father's quiet joy. Tyler laughed when the trout jumped right out of the bucket. Brought peanut butter worms again. He swears they work. Wind picked up. We packed early, heard owls. Then something changed. The first shift was subtle. The entry dated 2 weeks into the trip read, "Heard humming last night." Like a woman's voice, distant. Thought it was the wind at first, but Tyler heard it too. Days later, second night hearing the voice, now louder, coming from the lake. Tyler woke up crying, says it's calling him. His tone became strained. The handwriting began to slant, pressure deepening. Smudges appeared as if he was writing fast or with trembling hands. I saw lights on the water, blue, moving in circles like dancing, no boats nearby. I stayed awake all night. Something's wrong. Tyler sleepwalked, tried to go into the lake. The entries continued with mounting anxiety. I'm keeping him close. He doesn't remember anything. Said he dreamed of falling, but not into water, into light. Compass spins near the cove. Batteries drain fast. My watch stopped. Can't tell if it's morning or night anymore. James wrote of losing time. He recorded a day as Tuesday, then corrected it 3 pages later to Sunday. The entries became scattered, less structured. Some pages had only a few words. Trees moved. No echo in the cove. She's in the lake. Then came the entry that broke Megan. Tyler's sick. Pale, cold skin. He won't wake up. Keeps whispering she sees us. I wrapped him in all our blankets. I don't know what to do. Another scribbled on the back of a torn page. I saw her, in the water, eyes white, skin like mist. She smiled. I felt nothing. No sound. No breath. The next day's entry returned to clarity, as if James had fought his way back to himself. I have to get him out. We're leaving at dawn. No more waiting. Whatever this is, this place, it's wrong, it's pulling him in. And then the final entry, written in shaking letters, stained in the corner. Tyler is gone. I left the boat to look. I swear I saw him on the shore, but when I got there, it was only water. Then I heard him behind me. Laughter, running. I chased him, calling his name. The next line was underlined 3 times. He's not lost. He's somewhere else beneath, watching me. And then at the bottom a final plea. If someone finds this, we were not alone. Megan read the last sentence again and again. The weight of it crushed her. Not just the horror of what James had witnessed, but the fact that he wrote it down, chose to leave it behind, not a goodbye, a warning. The FBI analyzed the entries thoroughly. A behavioral analyst suggested James had suffered a psychotic break due to extreme isolation, malnutrition or trauma. But even they admitted the physical condition of the journal, still dry inside the sealed box, not degraded, meant it couldn't have been underwater long. Experts in handwriting noted inconsistencies in pressure and rhythm, signs of emotional deterioration, yes, but also genuine urgency. One linguist pointed out an unusual repetition of certain words, beneath, echo, and light, which could indicate obsessive pattern or recurring events. None of them could explain the carved object. Photos were sent to museums, universities. It wasn't just a totem, it was old, possibly ancient. The wood matched no local tree. The carvings didn't align with any known Native American pattern in the region. One professor from the University of Oregon said it resembled boundary markers used in ancient protective rites. Megan took that answer to heart. Maybe James hadn't lost his mind. Maybe he was trying to protect Tyler. Maybe that thing, the object, was a warning too, or a barrier. She returned to the lake one more time, the journal copies in hand, and sat by the water. The surface rippled gently, like it always had. Innocent. Deceptive. She whispered James's name, then Tyler's, and for the first time in 6 years, she felt something answer. Not a sound, not a voice, but a pull, like gravity. A deep sense that this wasn't over. Something remained, and she needed to know what. The journal raised more questions than it answered. Its words echoed in Megan's mind, looping endlessly. We were not alone. That phrase, those 5 words, gripped her with a force deeper than fear. They were not hysteria. They were a message. The FBI, though measured in public, moved quickly behind closed doors. Within a week of retrieving the journal and the carved artifact, they called in specialists, linguists, cultural historians, even a folklore expert from the Smithsonian. Megan wasn't told everything, but she could feel the tone shift. This was no longer a cold case, it was something else. She pressed for information and got scraps in return. One analyst mentioned a possibility of anomalous environmental phenomena, a term vague enough to mean anything. Another let slip that the wood used in the carving contained mineral traces not found in North America. The object, he said, wasn't just decorative, it was functional, meant for protection. A local elder named Nora Talltree, descended from the Salish people who once inhabited the Stillwater region, agreed to meet with Megan after much hesitation. They sat in silence at first, by the edge of the forest, Megan clutching a photograph of the artifact. Nora studied it for a long time. My grandfather spoke of a place where the water breathes, she said finally. He said the land remembers everything, even sorrow, especially sorrow. Megan asked what the object meant. It's a barrier, Nora replied, not to keep things in, but to keep something out. She refused to say more. That night, Megan returned home and read James's journal again. His descent wasn't random. There was a pattern, a timeline, clues hidden between the lines. The lights, the hum, Tyler's sickness, and then the disappearance. James hadn't gone mad. He had noticed something, tracked it, faced it. Determined to follow the trail, Megan drove back to Stillwater with maps, old ranger reports, and copies of the journal. She focused on the cove James mentioned repeatedly, the one where he saw lights, where Tyler sleepwalked, where time seemed to break. When she arrived, the area was eerily empty. The wind was still. Even the birds were quiet. Megan walked the perimeter, found footprints too old to trace, and stood at the edge of the water, staring down at her own reflection. That's when she met Ranger Caleb Knox. He emerged from the trees quietly, a man in his 60s, hat low over tired eyes. He recognized her immediately. "You're Mercer's sister," he said. "I figured you'd come back." He'd worked the lake for decades, knew its trails, its moods. He had searched for James and Tyler, helped organize the second round of searches when others had already given up. "I saw something back then," he said. "Didn't say anything, was told not to." Megan's heart raced. "What did you see?" He hesitated, then spoke softly. A shape, big, moved under the water, quiet, like it was listening. "I only saw it once, right after the storm that first week. I reported it to command. They told me to forget it." She pressed him for more, but he shook his head. "You think this lake just gives things back? It doesn't. That boat wasn't returned, it was released." The word chilled her. Released. Back home, she combed through old satellite data, storm records, and topographical scans of the lake. A pattern emerged. After every major storm, small anomalies, short bursts of sonar interference, irregular readings from depth sensors. Nothing conclusive, but nothing normal either. She sent these findings to a marine researcher she'd met during her years of independent digging, Dr. Hallis Green. He replied within hours, stunned. "If these readings are real, your lake isn't behaving like a natural body of water. It's responding." That word again. Responding. Something about Stillwater was alive, or aware, or both. And the journals? They weren't just memories, they were maps. On the last page, below James's frantic writing, Megan noticed something she hadn't before. A small etching, drawn in pencil, almost too faint to see. It matched a pattern on the wooden carving. A spiral made of jagged, repeating lines. When shown to Nora Talltree, the elder stiffened. "That's not from our people," she said. "It's older." Megan asked, "Older than your ancestors?" "Yes," Nora whispered. "Older than people." The mystery was no longer about James and Tyler alone. Something ancient slept beneath the lake, and James had stumbled upon it, recorded it, tried to fight it, maybe even delay it. Megan felt herself spiraling toward it now, as if the water had reached out and caught her in its undertow, and she wasn't going to stop, not until she reached the bottom. Megan didn't wait for permission. She knew if she asked the authorities, they would stall her, maybe even block her. But the time for waiting was over. The clues James left behind weren't just haunting, they were directional. His last journal entries referenced coordinates, water depths, currents, even pressure changes. Combined with what Dr. Green had confirmed and the stories Nora hinted at, there was only one conclusion. Something was beneath Stillwater Lake, something no one had dared to face. She contacted a private expedition team, divers with military backgrounds, accustomed to deep-sea recovery and low-visibility conditions. It took everything Megan had left in savings, but she didn't hesitate. 3 divers agreed to the job. One of them, Cam Rourke, had served in salvage missions in the Mariana Trench. He wasn't easily shaken. They arrived just before dawn. The lake was like glass, calm, indifferent. The sun had not yet breached the tree line. Equipment was set up quickly. Oxygen tanks, pressure sensors, a live video feed linked to surface monitors. No authorities were notified. This was Megan's mission. Cam read over James's notes again and nodded. If this trench is real, it's deeper than the lake's maximum reported depth. That's not possible on paper. He looked at the water. But we've seen things that defy the paper. The divers entered at 6:47 a.m. The water was cold, far colder than expected for that time of year. Cam reported it immediately. Temperature drop of 10 degrees in under 30 feet. That's unnatural. As they descended, the surface team watched in silence. Visibility faded quickly, then cleared again inexplicably at 70 feet. Strange formations began to appear, stone structures not natural, not jagged or random, but deliberate, arranged. Cam's voice came over the radio. "I'm looking at what looks like an altar. Not sure what else to call it, it's flat. Carvings match the sketch in the journal." Then static. A burst of garbled sound filled the comms. Megan's heart stopped. Seconds passed, like hours. Then Cam returned. "Sorry, signal interference. We're continuing down." They reached a drop-off at 120 feet. The trench wasn't on any known map. It plunged at a near-vertical angle, surrounded by smooth rock walls lined with unfamiliar glyphs. One diver marked it with a beacon. Cam hesitated at the edge. "Proceeding," he said. As they descended into the trench, the video feed began to distort. Colors bending, images twisting slightly like heat waves underwater. The screen blinked once, then again. Cam's voice came back, shaky, strained. "There's a movement." The video feed caught a glimpse, shadows shifting across the frame, shapes too large, too slow to be fish. Then a sudden flicker, something glinting in the light. The camera steadied. Hanging from a rock outcrop, swaying slightly in the current, was a child's bracelet, bright blue with faded yellow stars. Megan gasped. It was Tyler's. Cam reached for it, fingers trembling, and just as he touched it, the feed went black. Silence. The surface team scrambled to re-establish contact. Megan shouted Cam's name. Static. Nothing. Seconds dragged. Then, bubbles on the sonar. Fast. Rising. One diver broke the surface, gasping for air, eyes wide with unspoken terror. He ripped off his mask, fell to his knees on the deck and began to shake uncontrollably. Megan rushed to him. "Where are the others?" she cried. He didn't answer, just whispered one word. "Watching." An hour later, rescue divers were sent to retrieve the remaining two. They found no bodies, no equipment, no beacon. The trench was gone, as if it had never existed. The entire area now registered as flat lakebed on sonar. The glyphs, the altar, the drop, all vanished. Cam Rourke was never found. The diver who surfaced, a man named Jules Navarro, was taken to a nearby hospital in shock. He refused to speak to anyone for 2 days. Then he called for Megan. When she arrived, he handed her a torn page from his personal dive log. It had a drawing, a spiral within a circle, the same symbol James had etched into his journal. Below it, one sentence: "It was never the lake." Megan left without a word. Her thoughts were spinning. The water didn't just conceal, it moved, changed, protected something ancient and intelligent. Maybe it wasn't the lake that took James and Tyler. Maybe the lake was only the door. And something on the other side had opened it. The town of Crescent Falls erupted with speculation when news of the dive leaked. No official statements were made, but rumors spread faster than the fog rolling off Stillwater Lake. Something had gone wrong. Equipment had been lost, a diver was missing. And Megan Mercer had seen something she wasn't talking about. The media circled like vultures. Reporters parked outside Megan's home, asking questions she refused to answer. Online forums buzzed with theories, some logical, others wildly speculative. Paranormal channels claimed proof of a gateway beneath the lake. Conspiracy theorists insisted it was a government cover-up. Megan said nothing publicly, but behind closed doors, she tried to make sense of what she'd witnessed. The recovered footage had been scrambled beyond usability. The sonar files disappeared from her laptop the night after the dive. At first, she blamed a glitch. Then she noticed something stranger. Her internet history erased, backup drives wiped. Even her printed notes were gone from her locked desk drawer. Someone had been inside her home. That same day, 3 unmarked vans arrived at the ranger station near Stillwater. Men in dark uniforms with no visible insignias entered the restricted area. They stayed 2 days, speaking to no one. When they left, the lake was suddenly declared a protected ecological zone. Entry was prohibited, signs were posted, fines issued. Anyone caught near the water faced prosecution. It was a wall. Not of concrete, but silence. Megan wasn't surprised. The lake had become a secret too big for the town, and someone, something, wanted it to stay buried. Still, she refused to stop. Desperate for answers, she reached out to Jules Navarro, the diver who had survived. He was under medical watch, deemed psychologically unstable. But Megan found him sitting alone at a rehab facility on the edge of Spokane, staring out at a garden without really seeing it. When she approached, he didn't speak at first. Then, in a low, brittle voice, he said, "It wasn't water down there. It looked like it, but it wasn't." He described the feeling of descending into the trench, the pressure, the distortion of sound. The way his own thoughts seemed to echo before he even thought them. "Something heard us," he whispered, "and it didn't like being heard." Megan asked about Cam. "He followed the light," Jules said. "He touched the rock and vanished, like the water folded around him." She asked what he meant by, "It wasn't the lake." He turned to her, eyes haunted. "The lake is just the opening. What's beneath it isn't from here. It's deeper than time." He drew the same spiral again, shakier this time. Then he said, "You have to go to the forest. The answers aren't in the water anymore. They're in what feeds it." That night, Megan drove north into the woods surrounding Stillwater Lake. Guided by fragments from James's journals and what Jules had said, she followed a trail not marked on any map. It was narrow, overgrown, but strangely clear, like it had been walked recently. After 2 hours, she reached it. A cabin, rotting, ancient, half swallowed by moss and time. Not on any property registry, no signs of recent habitation. Yet the door was ajar, the air inside dry. She stepped in. Dust floated in beams of moonlight, shelves lined with rotting books, bones of animals long dead, symbols carved into the walls, crude spirals, stars, marks that made her stomach turn, a fire pit, long cold, and on a table beneath a broken lantern, a notebook. She opened it. The handwriting was small, slanted, different, but unmistakably young. The first line, "My name is Tyler Mercer." Megan nearly dropped the book. Her hand shook as she turned the page. "I don't know how long I've been here. There's no sun, no time. But I remember Dad. He told me to run." It wasn't a hallucination, not a ghost. Tyler had been alive, writing, trapped. The entries were sparse, broken by long gaps. Some described strange beings, the woman made of water and shadow, the silent ones who swim the sky. Others were just drawings, stars turning inward, lakes inside caves, spirals again and again. The final pages hurt the most. Dad stayed. He said he had to stop the lake from waking up again. He made it sleep. He made me promise to keep running. And then scrawled across the last page in fading ink, "I think I found a way out." Megan sank to the floor, notebook clutched to her chest. Somewhere, somehow, Tyler had escaped. Now, she just had to find where he'd gone. Megan didn't sleep that night. She read and reread every page of Tyler's notebook, committing his words to memory. It wasn't just the content, it was the voice. She could hear him. Not just a child lost, but someone who had endured the impossible, survived, adapted. The entries varied in clarity. Some were lucid, others confused, like Tyler had drifted between states of consciousness. He described a realm not bound by time or space, a place that mirrored parts of the real world but twisted, deeper, older. "It's like the lake, but it's not wet. The sky is black and the trees grow upside down. I hear music, but not from instruments, like singing from inside my chest." He spoke of tunnels beneath the water, carved not by machines or nature, but by intention. They glowed faintly, and through them he was led by a figure he called the Water Lady. "She looks like Mom, but I know she's not. She smells like salt and dirt. Her hands are cold, but she smiles, and when she sings I feel warm." The entries became more fragmented as time passed. He stopped using dates. Time, he said, stopped making sense. "I sleep, but I don't rest. I dream, but I don't wake. Sometimes I think I'm back home, but then the shadows start to swim." One entry described other voices. "There are others, people. Some old, some kids like me. I think they're lost too. They don't always talk, but I feel them. We're in different parts of this place, but we're all connected, like fish in the same net." Megan paused on that one. If Tyler wasn't alone, were others still trapped? Another entry chilled her to the bone. "One night I saw Dad. He was standing in the sky, not floating, standing. The Water Lady said he stayed behind to fix the echo. She said the lake remembers pain and he gave it peace." It confirmed what she feared. James hadn't vanished. He had chosen to stay. Tyler's description of the final days in that place were the most coherent. Something had changed. The realm, as he called it, was closing. He described a shaking, a rumbling from beneath. The paths began to collapse. Lights flickered. The Water Lady wept. "She told me I had to go, that I was too young to stay. She said I could find the door, but only if I stopped looking." Megan didn't understand that. Stop looking? What did it mean? The last entry. "I followed the light, not the glowing kind, the one that feels like home. I remembered the smell of Dad's coat. The way the stars looked from the cabin, the peanut butter worms. I held that in my head and walked, and then I wasn't there anymore." He never said where he ended up. But Megan believed him. Every word. He'd found a way out, not by force, not by escape, but by memory, emotion, something the realm couldn't hold, a tether stronger than fear. She copied the journal, sent it to trusted contacts. One of them, a professor of mytho-spiritual anthropology, responded with urgency. "You're describing a place deeply aligned with liminal theory," she wrote. "A threshold space between worlds, often accessed through trauma or powerful emotion. Most cultures have a version of this. Some call it the underplace. Others the between." The professor confirmed that the symbols Tyler drew resembled those from ancient sites across Siberia, Iceland, and the Pacific Northwest, all connected to myths about echoing lakes or singing caves, sites where people vanished or returned, changed. Megan now knew Tyler had not been claimed by death, but by something else. Something vast, intelligent, and possibly benevolent in ways humans couldn't understand. But James had stayed behind, made the lake sleep. How? Why? That question haunted her more than any other. If Tyler could escape by remembering love, had James stayed because he held the pain? Maybe that was the cost. Maybe something ancient had to be calmed not by force, but by sacrifice. Still, Megan needed more. She wasn't satisfied knowing Tyler had made it out. She needed to find him, touch his hand, hear his voice. She began tracking missing persons across the state, those who had vanished near lakes, caves, forests. A pattern formed. Some were never found, but others had returned, not many. Just enough to be noticed. One girl in Oregon, a man in Alaska, a child in Montana. Each had stories of dreams becoming real, of places where time moved sideways, of beings that watched, protected, and sometimes whispered the way home. Each of them drew spirals. Megan kept searching. She returned to the cabin, waited by the edge of the forest. She carried both journals with her everywhere. She whispered his name daily, and one night in the quiet hum between dusk and dawn, she heard her name whispered back. It was faint, like the soft rustle of leaves or the hush of waves far away, but it was clear. Megan stood frozen at the edge of the forest, heart pounding, eyes wide. Her name echoed again, not from the trees but from somewhere within her, like it had always been there, waiting to be heard. She whispered back, "Tyler?" Silence. Then the wind shifted. She followed instinct more than direction. Down the hill, past the old trail, through branches that seemed to part for her. She clutched the journals to her chest as if they were a compass. Her feet moved without thought. Her mind swam with memories. Tyler's laugh, James's calm voice, afternoons by the lake, the smell of pine and peanut butter sandwiches. And then she saw it. Not a door, not a light, just a clearing, perfectly still. The trees curved unnaturally inward, forming a dome of branches. The center held nothing but grass and footprints, small ones, leading away. She followed. Each step brought a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Grief lifted, not all at once, but like mist burned off by sunlight. The trees around her grew taller, older. The forest felt alive, not watching, not threatening, just present. She walked for what felt like minutes or hours. Time lost its grip. Then a head, a shape, a figure, small, still. She stopped breathing. "Tyler," she whispered again. The boy turned. Same eyes, same face, a little older, a little wiser, but unmistakably him. He ran to her, and she dropped the journals, fell to her knees, and wrapped him in her arms. He was real, solid, breathing. "Mama," he said, using the word he hadn't said since he was 3. She laughed and sobbed and held him tighter than she ever had. They sat there a long time, no questions, no explanations, just presence. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a carved piece of wood, smooth and familiar. "Dad gave me this," he said it would help me find you. Megan took it in her hand. It was warm. She looked around. The forest shimmered, not with light, but with a stillness that felt like acknowledgement. A farewell, a release. They walked back together, hand in hand. When they emerged from the trees, dawn was breaking. Crescent Falls never saw it happen. No newspapers reported a miraculous return. No cameras captured the moment. Megan didn't tell the sheriff. She didn't contact the FBI. Some truth she now understood couldn't survive in the light of explanation. She simply brought her son home. In the weeks that followed, she and Tyler lived quietly. He spoke little of the place he'd been, only small fragments of music in the dark, of a warmth that never let go, of a woman made of mist who whispered stories when he was scared, and always, always, of his father. "He stayed," Tyler said one night. "He told me to go, but I think he's still there." Megan nodded. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. They returned to Stillwater once more. It was fenced off, guarded, silent. But Megan didn't approach the water. She stood at the edge, pulled both journals from her bag, and laid them gently in the grass. Then she whispered, "Thank you." A breeze passed through the trees. A single ripple formed on the lake's surface. Then, stillness. That was the end of her search. But not the end of the story. The lake remained closed to the public. Lights were still seen from time to time, soft pulses beneath the surface, sometimes red, sometimes blue. People whispered, hikers reported strange dreams, birds avoided nesting near the cove. No one fished there anymore. Stillwater became legend, but Megan didn't care. She had what she came for, her son. And the memory of a man who had given everything not to escape, but to protect. James Mercer had faced the unknown not with fear, but with love. And in doing so, he calmed something ancient, something broken, something waiting. The lake slept now, and in their home a carved piece of wood rested on a shelf above Tyler's bed. A spiral, a circle, a promise. Before you go, if this story moved you, if you felt even a flicker of the mystery, of the grief, of the hope, please subscribe. These stories, real or nearly forgotten, deserve to be heard. And if you want to uncover what else was found in those journals, click the video now appearing on your screen. There's more beneath the surface, always.